Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining this discussion. I'm Meinke. I'm the Chief Product and Innovation Officer at Zest. And for those who don't know Zest, we are one of the UK's leading employee benefits platforms, and we help employers deliver a seamless employee proposition that is highly personalised, super engaging, and allows employees to understand the total value of their employer's offer. What I'm going to cover in this session, and what I hope you leave this session with an understanding of, is how data is going to allow you to supercharge your employee proposition, and also what steps you need to take now to get prepared for the impending AI revolution that's occurring around us. The things I'm talking about today are future facing, but we're not talking about them being a decade away. We are talking horizons here of months, sometimes maybe years, but we're not talking 4 or 5 years here. We're talking much shorter horizon than that. In terms of format, I'm going to present for probably the next 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes or so, and then I'll answer any questions at the end. Please do drop any questions into the chat as we go, and I'll pick them up at the end of the session. So let's dive straight in. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen because I don't get any feedback at this point in time. So I expect that some of you sitting on this webinar are maybe suffering from a little bit of AI fatigue. I know that it's certainly a sentiment that I've encountered over the last few weeks and months as I've been having conversations with many companies, prospects, clients across the UK. And I think there's primarily 2 reasons for it. The first of which is that there's a lot of big claims, advancements around AI that frankly don't feel like they're particularly connected to our day-to-day work. So yes, I can now type a prompt into an AI tool and generate a video of a car driving down a road, for example. But really, that doesn't help me in the context of people teams, in the context of delivering an exceptional employee experience. I can get one large language model to fight another large language model in a game of Street Fighter and see who wins. But again, it doesn't help me with my employee proposition or with my day-to-day activities. And I can ask AI to create me images from Barbies from different countries around the world with some exceptionally problematic results. But again, it doesn't actually it's not really meaningful in my day-to-day role. So I think there's a level of people feeling, a disconnect from some of the things that are now possible and the actual practical value of those things. And separately, I think people's sort of lived experience on a day-to-day basis with their existing systems, their existing ways of working, etc., feels maybe so far away from the sort of vision that is often being discussed when we talk about AI. So I really want to cover 2 things during this webinar. I want to cover how we can unlock the value of our data and use impending AI tooling to really supercharge our employee proposition, because a lot of what is happening is really relevant to our roles as people teams. And I want to make sure that people understand how that is going to manifest. And secondly, as it relates to being a long way from where we are now, I want to talk about some of the barriers and some of the practical steps that we can take so that we're really well prepared to make the most of new tooling, platforms, technologies that are becoming available to us. So we're going to talk a lot about the employee proposition, and lots of people have sort of different definitions for what they mean when they talk about employee proposition. I think of it very much in the same way that I think about a commercial proposition that we take to market, where people are fundamentally trying to achieve a job and they have a series of needs while doing that. And in the context of going to work, most people are going to work because they want to earn a living. Ultimately, that's their fundamental job they're trying to get done. And they have a series of needs, and a lot of those needs are going to be common across all segments, all cohorts of our population. So typically when people go to work to earn a living, they want to maximize their earnings. People want more money in their pocket at the end of the day. They want to feel like their role has a really positive impact, both within the context of their company and potentially in broader society. And they also have a series of sort of pains, needs that they don't want to encounter as they go to work. So, you know, no one wants to go to work and feel disrespected. No one wants to go to work and feel undervalued. And people want to broadly have a really good work-life balance. All of these are just examples. There's far more than these, but these are typically things that are pretty common across different cohorts. And we can develop an employee proposition to meet these common needs. So for example, if we want to make sure that people are maximizing their earnings, if we've got the financial ability to do so, we might pay people above the industry average. And some sectors are able to do that. If people want to have a positive impact, we need to make sure we've got a really clear mission statement. People have autonomy within their roles to actually achieve against that mission. And we can make sure that we have recognition and rewards, really strong EDI programs that make people feel valued, recognized for their contribution when they come to work, with a really good culture. And in terms of work-life balance, which has obviously got more attention over the last few years since COVID, we can make sure we've got really strong remote working policies, really strong tooling to help people be efficient regardless of where they're working. And we can think about all of these things in the context of providing a market-leading employee experience, which is broadly what most people want to provide as their employee proposition. And as I said, these things are all reasonably common. But it starts to quickly become much more complicated when we recognize that actually we've got lots of different segments or cohorts within our teams, both within our existing employee base, but also within the talent pools that we're trying to attract to come and work for us, where each one of these segments may well have quite different needs or place a different level of importance on some of these needs. So for example, we might have a talent pool where we're trying to attract graduates into their first role in the workplace, who might be looking for something very different from work than maybe an experienced developer, say, who is further along in their career. And they might have two very different sets of needs. So for example, we might have someone who is trying to maximize the time that they're available for their family versus someone who actually wants to increase their opportunities to network, maybe outside of work time as well as in work time. We might have someone who is really currently valuing job security versus someone who actually is putting more value, more emphasis on the opportunities that can be provided for career development and learning and growth, because they're at different stages of their career. And we might be focused on someone who wants to maximize their impact and prioritize maximizing their income, during retirement, versus someone who's got a need to remove short-term barriers to buying a house or another more short-term sort of financial objective. And of course, while we can start to build up patterns across different segments, across different cohorts, there's always going to be those individual needs as well. So how do you start to develop an employee proposition that meets the needs of all these different cohorts when there's so many things to consider. We've got salary, we've got employee benefits, we've got reward and recognition, we've got all of our people policies, we've got culture, learning and development, career progression, the tools available for people to do their jobs, work-life balance, equality, diversity and inclusion, leadership, the company mission, role autonomy, all of these things that come together to form our employee proposition, where different cohorts have different needs. And it's no wonder that in that context, we did some research recently that showed that 45% of employees actually think that their workplace benefits package is inadequate, even though 48% of employers have recently increased their investment within their workplace benefits package. And there's also a disconnect between what employees want and what employers are offering them. So, for example, 21% of employers now say that they offer mindfulness programs, yet only 4% of employees say they make use of those mindfulness programs. Conversely, private medical insurance is cited as the sort of top benefit in demand with 32% by 32% of employees, but only 14% say that their employers are currently offering that. So how can we understand those needs, and how can we better meet those challenges of delivering a more personalized employee proposition that meets the needs of each one of those cohorts and ultimately delivers on our business objectives? We have to do that by unlocking the value of the data that we have available to us. And by unlocking the value of the data that in many cases we already have, and in some cases we need to go and obtain, it's going to allow us to become much more confident in understanding the needs of our people as a first step and understanding where our opportunities lay. So if we can get access to all of our data and unlock the value of it, we can start to use some of the really exciting technology that's becoming available. And AI is not going to sit around and wait until you ask it the right question. And that's lots of people's experience of it at the moment. You actually need to be able to engineer a really good prompt to be able to get some really good insight back from the current sort of general purpose tools that many people are interacting with on a day-to-day basis at the moment. But actually, it's going to be much more proactive than that over the next few years. So, for example, in the context of people teams, it's going to allow us to understand where our opportunities are for improvement and the size of those opportunities. So where should we be focusing our time and attention? So as an example, it will be able to tell me that employees in my Birmingham developer cohort, in this example, have an average attrition of 27%. And that's higher than my company average of 14%. And it's also higher than the industry average for those roles in that certain location. So there's either a problem or there's an opportunity, depending on which way you look at it. But not only can it identify the opportunity, it can also quantify the opportunity. So if we also understand through data our recruitment costs, we also understand the ramp time. Developers, take a long time to become fully productive on complex platforms. So, lost productivity is a real issue if you've got high turnover. We can quantify, it's going to be 6 months until they become fully productive at this cost or opportunity cost to the company. So we can start to proactively, or the data can start to proactively allow us to understand where our opportunities are and prioritize which opportunities should take our attention. And for that same cohort, it's also going to help us understand the potential root causes of that. So for example, the data can tell us, and tooling that's becoming available will use the data to tell us that the average salary of a developer role in that cohort is 18% below the local average salary benchmark. Again, for that type of role in that type of area. It might also be able to tell us, assuming we've got access to the data, that leavers from that cohort on average only had 1.2 roles within our organization versus a higher number of roles across other parts of the organization where maybe we don't have the same retention issues. So maybe there's a career progression, maybe there's a learning and development challenge in this cohort. And Birmingham employees within that cohort are also saying, and they're telling us maybe through our surveys, that they're less satisfied with recognition than the average of cohorts where we see lower attrition as well. So maybe people aren't feeling valued and recognized in that particular cohort, and that may also be causing them to leave. And then employees in that cohort, in that particular, or sorry, in that group, in that area, outside of our organization, cite private medical as the third most desirable benefit after remote working and pension contributions. And calling on a broader set that might not be available to you, but platform providers will be able to provide, will be able to say, well, how many of this type of role within this certain area have access to that benefit that is in demand, and what does the funding profile look like on that benefit typically across employers within that area as well. So maybe there's an unmet need there where they could go elsewhere and have that need met. So we will be able to much better understand the needs of our people if we can unlock the value of the data. And as I say, we're already sitting on a lot of that data already, whether that be in HR systems, benefit platforms, spreadsheets, employee feedback platforms, etc. But it's only going to be of use, and it's only going to be of value if we can actually action something when we understand what those needs are. And platforms are very rapidly evolving now that are going to provide you confidence that you can deliver a really personalized proposition for each segment and person. And it's worth saying that benefit platforms like Zest already offer a high degree of personalization. So, showing information benefits that are only relevant to certain cohorts or certain individuals within an organization, or during certain parts of that employee's life cycle with the company, so that you can target only meaningful content and communications around your employee proposition to the right audience. However, that is going to be absolutely supercharged by understanding and unlocking the value of that data we just talked about, because you're going to be able to far better target the exact right messages, the right initiatives, the right campaigns at the right people, rather than at the moment where we see people taking a much broader brush approach, which means also the tooling within these platforms will and is very rapidly evolving in this area. And I understand that if you're already stuck sort of using Excel and mail merge to, administer a lot of your, whether it's benefit schemes, whether it's, mail merge to target the right communications at the right teams, this might already seem like a big step forwards, but there's a lot more exciting capabilities that are sitting in the near horizon. And let me show you what some of that is going to look like. So let's take our Birmingham developer cohort again. We talked about the fact that remote working was the highest valued benefit that the organization provides. So we could call that out in a campaign and get that message front and center. But for that cohort, where that is a primary driver of retention, maybe for a different cohort, it's a completely different message. In terms of the content that we provide them, it's going to be possible to, at a much more granular level, target these communications. So we talked about the fact that actually we may have an issue with career growth and opportunities within this particular cohort. So we're promoting articles that actually have been tagged with, career development that is focused on their specific domain. so that they feel like support does exist, opportunity does exist within their organization. They understand the pathway to stay within the organization. We talked about that this fictional cohort maybe really highly value private medical insurance, as do many employees around the UK. And actually, if we then invest in rolling that out, we want to make sure we're really promoting that to this high risk cohort where they're at risk of leaving, and we want to drive that now. We think this is going to have a meaningful impact. Let's promote that one benefit to this cohort. Maybe we're promoting other benefits to other cohorts, other individuals based on their own needs. And finally, really calling out any recognition that relates specifically to this department, because we know that this department feels underappreciated. So making sure that we've got a platform here that takes all of that really rich insight that we gained around each one of these cohorts and actually turns it into tangible action to improve each employee's experience. And then finally, as we unlock the value of that data, that is going to allow us to move to become really confident in measuring business outcomes. And what does that mean in practice? It means we're going to be able to move away from often looking at vanity metrics to things that are really aligned to discussions that are happening at a board level. So, for example, you shouldn't care about benefit uptake. Your CEO doesn't care about benefit uptake, and it's not a useful measure of success ultimately for the business. The board isn't talking about benefit uptake. The board is focused on retention, attraction, and whether our employees are engaged in the success of our business. Things that can have direct, tangible numbers on the top and bottom line. And of course, I'm being a little obtuse because there is some value of benefit uptake as an input metric for some of those campaigns we just saw, but it shouldn't be the ultimate goal. And what we want to understand is, how are we tracking against that opportunity that we identified? So going back to our example with the Birmingham developer cohort, we wanted to reduce attrition because ultimately that was the thing that was going to save us money. And we want to bring it down to a level that is aligned to the organizational average. Well, how is each one of the initiatives that we're undertaking helping to move the needle in the right direction? Are we actually undertaking initiatives that might cost us money that actually aren't helping us to progress towards that ultimate objective? And in this example, we care about the cost to deliver these changes. So how much time, how much financial investment does it take to actually undertake these initiatives? And how much impact are these initiatives having in reducing recruitment costs, reducing lost productivity in that particular cohort? Lots of what I've just talked about here is already possible to do. And so maybe for some people, this seems like, well, this is something we can already understand. We just invest, we focus on an area, we invest a lot of time. Maybe we bring in external consultants, maybe we lean in on our IT teams to help us pull some information together. But ultimately, at the moment, this is an exceptionally time-intensive undertaking for organizations where, frankly, most people teams don't have dedicated, data analysts who are able to understand each one of these issues in the level of detail that would be required. And this is where the new generation of tooling that's becoming available is really going to help, because it's going to come at us and it's going to proactively give us this information, proactively highlight these opportunities, allow us to track these things without investing huge amounts of time that simply isn't available within people teams. So that is the vision, that is the direction of travel. That is why AI, being able to access our data, being able to utilize AI tooling that's coming to market is so exciting for people teams. So it is really relevant to the sort of work that we're doing and that we're helping our clients to undertake on a day-to-day basis. So the opportunity here is massive. But I appreciate that also sounds like a wonderful vision, and it might feel a million miles away from where we are today. Maybe you've spent the whole morning this morning, stuck in the detail of some spreadsheets that, very task-based sort of activities, and this just feels like a world away, and we have no idea how to move in the right direction. So let's explore some of the common barriers and some of the practical things that you can be doing right now, regardless of your organizational maturity, to make sure you're moving in the right direction and you're getting well prepared to take advantage of tools that are coming to market. So you may be sitting there thinking, well, we're being held back. And we're being held back by maybe our existing platforms, our existing systems that we have within our people team at the moment. Maybe our existing ways of working are holding us back as well. And it feels like a drag. Even if we got rid of those, it feels like we maybe have some insurmountable barriers. Maybe the time, the financial investment, and the knowledge required to move us in this direction feel like they're significant. And actually the time and the financial investment are broadly quite low if you've got the right knowledge to take advantage of the right technologies. And even if we could do this, maybe some people are put off in even starting this journey because actually it just feels very dangerous. What we're talking about here is analyzing broader data sets, exposing broader data sets to analysis tools that maybe we don't fully understand because there's a aspect of black box decision making. Our employee data is going to be processed in a certain way that we don't process it today, and therefore that comes with data protection issues. We are talking ultimately about sensitive data here, sometimes sensitive data as classified by GDPR, that we have to process in line with data protection regulations. So let's talk about some of those challenges. Firstly, existing platform limitations. So we might be sat there thinking, oh, all of our tooling doesn't feel like it's going to allow us to move in this direction. So what do you need to do? You need to be setting out a platform strategy. What tooling do we need to undertake which roles within our organization? And what should we be looking out for in terms of the characteristics of our existing tooling, or indeed tooling we might be considering that we actually need to avoid to make sure that we're well positioned to take advantage of the value of our data? Well, firstly, seems like a really straightforward point, but all of the platforms within your HR technology ecosystem need to provide you access to your data. And that access should be on demand in the format you need when you need it. Yes, ideally also have all of the automation capabilities around being able to, put this to this location or the right integration. But actually, fundamentally, there are a lot of platforms out there in the HR ecosystem at the moment that just don't provide you adequate access to your data. And that's going to be essential. So that has to be a number one requirement of any platform in your ecosystem. And that absolutely should not include platforms where if you want a new report, if you want a report on a different date than you've currently got it, you need to make a manual service request to a provider. If that's the case, they're probably hiding complexity behind spreadsheets that are being manually created in the background. And not only does that create you an issue because you can't access your data on demand in the format you need it, but it also introduces additional risk. If people are having to do a level of manual transformation in the background on spreadsheets, it leads to risks of inaccuracies and errors. So data should be coming directly out of your platforms in the format you need it and when you need it. Platforms in today's world should not require significant periods of downtime and big projects to be undertaken for changes that you want. We have, in the employee benefit space, moved to a completely codeless platform, for example, with Zest, where all of our benefits configuration lives on a period by period basis over time, where you can change the rules, and those are simple configuration changes through the interface, not code being written based on complex scheme rules that has the chance to go wrong. All of that complexity should be dealt with by the platform provider when they designed the platform, not in the implementation of your specific instance of that platform. So if you have platforms that feel like, one, in order to get it updated, maybe, in the context of benefits, every scheme year, that shouldn't require downtime on your platform. That probably means codes being written, codes being deployed, reflecting your scheme rules. And it also potentially means that the data from last year is being discarded and you're getting a fresh set of data in this year. It's really important in the context of the sort of trends that I talked about, that we can build up that rich history of data over time and understand every employee's journey through your company. And if every small change feels like a big project, then it is not going to ultimately allow you to be agile enough where you're able to quickly change your employee proposition in a very nimble manner to respond to all of the learnings and insights that you're going to get fed back to you. So, like with Zest, it should be that, all HR platforms, the configuration should be quick, simple, require no downtime, and simply be effective data change. If you've got platforms that provide really fragmented experiences, and what I mean by that is logging into different parts of the platform, maybe having different apps for different aspects of the platform, then it points to the fact that there may not be a unified data model sitting in the background. Maybe platforms have been acquired, merged together over time, and actually the work hasn't gone in the background to bring together the data that sits behind them. So unless there's a really good reason that your platform provider is telling you to have that fragmentation, that's something that I would be approaching with a level of skepticism. And then finally, connectivity is super important. So it is highly unlikely that any one of your platforms is going to provide you all of the data you need to understand the totality of your employee proposition. Even platforms like Zest that encompass a huge amount of that data. We're talking HR platforms, recruitment platforms. You've probably got spreadsheets with certain things sitting inside them. You've certainly got benefits platforms, etc. All of these platforms provide a slightly different role for your organization and contain their own sets of data. And therefore, it's really important that we're able to analyze the holistic proposition, not just individual aspects of it, because it's going to lead to incorrect analysis, incorrect insights as a result. So what can you be doing in terms of your platforms? You need to be defining a platform strategy right now. You need to be working really closely with your technology teams, with your procurement teams, to understand what are the different platforms we need. Forget what you've got today. What are the different platforms we need in our organization to undertake the different roles? And what do we need them to look like or the capabilities to be like from a data perspective? I would suggest that these are some of your top priorities when you're assessing the suitability of your existing platforms to be able to support you on the journey that you're going to go on. Related to that is fragmented and poorly structured data. We said about the need to be able to integrate those different data sources. If we've got fragmented and poorly structured data, it's going to result in us ultimately leading to incorrect conclusions and us maybe spinning our wheels, investing time in initiatives that ultimately don't bear fruit in relation to the outcome we're trying to achieve. So alongside your platform strategy, you want to be developing a data strategy that says not only are these the platforms and the roles that they undertake, but this is the data that they both need and the data that they can provide, and where the data in our organization is ultimately going to be mastered. And one thing that you really want to be looking out for in terms of being able to get that really rich insight that we're talking about in this vision is being able to effective date that data over time. So not just what is this employee's, does this employee's record look like today, but how has this employee's journey through our organization changed over time? You know, they had these benefits last year, they've evolved and they've now tailored their package to look like this. Why are people, you know, changing their own benefits package, for example? Which parts are people appreciating and putting value on now versus what they used to? The same is true across a swathe of your data. So having really strong, effective data information in your platform is a real key requirement to support you on this journey. Another barrier that you might be sitting thinking about is knowledge and skills. AI, data analysis, and AI are really fast moving technologies, and they might feel, you know, completely alien, frankly, if you're not already exposed to these on a daily basis. But actually, the fundamental principles and the principles that will actually impact your day-to-day interaction with these tools are fairly straightforward to understand. You don't need to, you know, gain an understanding of the inner workings of large language models, for example. You need to understand the platforms in the context of the role that you're doing. And there's some really good courses out there that allow you to do that. So there's courses on LinkedIn, there's courses on Coursera that are specific to AI in the context of HR teams, people teams. So I'd encourage you to look at those. There's also some really good courses out there on Udemy if you're lucky enough to be provided a subscription to Udemy as part of your package at work. Some really good general introductions to AI. So I would really recommend building that into the personal development plan of your people team today. So over the next 6 months, year, you're really starting to acquire the knowledge and skills within your team, building that up, that you're going to need as you bring in new platforms. Otherwise, you won't necessarily know what you're asking for as you're bringing new platforms into the business, and you'll be reliant. You'll have a very high degree of trust on those platforms to tell you about their capabilities, and not necessarily be well positioned to ask the right questions. Data protection is absolutely non-negotiable in the world we deal in terms of people's employment information. Every employer has a legal obligation to protect the data of data subjects, their employees included. And inevitably, if we want to do something different with that data, i.e. we want to undertake analysis that we weren't doing before, that has implications from a data protection perspective. At the very minimum, you're going to need to update your privacy policies to let employees know how you're processing the data, the basis on which you're processing that data to gain this new insight, to provide more targeted content, etc. But actually, it might require some additional controls as well. So, for example, it might require that actually your organization deems that because it's personal data, all of your platforms must be hosted within the UK and all of the data continue to reside in the UK, which is really useful to know now, not, you know, at the end of the process, because it can help inform your platform strategy. So, for example, when you're going out to acquire a new benefits platform, in our case, knowing that it needs to be UK hosted and the data reside in the UK, as with Zest, is a key requirement to inform your platform strategy, not as an afterthought to it when you've maybe already signed up, you know, to use a number of new platforms. And that can include other controls like the level of anonymization of data or pseudo-anonymization of data that's required to undertake certain analytics, where we don't need to know the individual's details, we just need to know some of the information that pertains to them that becomes non-identifiable. And this might sound really complex, but you have an expert in your organization who's able to guide you through this in your data protection officer. And every UK organization is going to have one. So the best thing to do as a first step right now is engage with your data protection officer, outline the vision of where you want to get to, outline your current platform strategy as you start to put it together, and they can guide you, they can advise you and use their expertise to set that path out. This isn't something that you need to tackle in isolation. And then finally, the other thing that this is going to require is a bit of a change to the culture within some people teams. So I see a lot of employee propositions within organizations that broadly remain unchanged year on year on year. And maybe there's a tweak here, a tweak there, and maybe there's, an annual employee survey where we go and understand, the changes we made 9 months ago. What do you think about them? But actually, this information is going to be much more real time. It's going to allow us to track progress on a weekly and daily basis. And therefore, we shouldn't be waiting periods of years in order to iterate and learn. We should be iterating much quicker, doing much smaller testing, getting those feedback mechanisms in place to understand, is the initiative we're working on actually gaining momentum and having a positive impact. So for example, in our Birmingham developer cohort, if we think that attrition is being driven by reason A and B, and we undertake initiatives to try and address those, and then we see attrition remain at the same level, and through our lever interviews, we actually understand that yes, A and B are important, but actually reason C is the primary cause why we've got a high attrition rate, then we need to respond to that and respond to it as quickly as possible. What can we be doing? Are we actually wasting our time in our initiatives in A and B? Let's refocus onto initiative C. So we need to become much more agile as people teams, and we need to embrace and make sure we've got the right feedback loops set up within our organization. And that can happen today. That can happen today without needing these different platforms in place, making sure you've got those feedback loops in place and understand where you're getting that feedback and that data coming back in to validate. So in conclusion, there is a massive amount of value in the data that you hold as a HR team, as a people team, as a benefits team. And there's a lot of tooling coming to market, whether that's general purpose tooling, whether that's more specific tooling that is going to allow you to transform your employee experience. It's going to allow you to much better, much more granularly and much more proactively understand the needs of your people and candidates. And it's going to do that without requiring really costly consultants, without requiring huge investments of your time, so long as you can unlock the value of your data. It's going to mean that you're going to be able to deliver hyper-personalized. Really, we're talking, a level far beyond that that's been possible today. Much more personalized experiences based on the needs of individuals and cohorts within your organization and the needs of the business in terms of the objectives that you're trying to fulfill. And it's going to allow you to much easier demonstrate return on investment and make sure that the things that you are working on ultimately have a really clear connection to the issues that your board care about. But you do need to act now, even if you're not, even if that vision maybe isn't realizable today, tomorrow. It's really not very far away, and some of these things are going to take time, which means you have to get on the front foot with this because you will risk being left behind. So putting together a really clear platform and data strategy that considers the whole, not just individual needs where we're plugging a gap with a new platform that does X, Y, Z, actually stepping back and much more holistically looking at that, making sure that we are embedding data skills, AI skills, knowledge within our personal development plans for our people teams today, using the free tools, often free learning resources that are available, that we're engaging early with our data protection officers so that they can help guide us through that process. And we're starting to really embrace an agile culture where we understand where our feedback mechanisms are. How are we learning? How are we embracing change? What allows us to move quickly, evolve quickly? So that is the summary of everything I've just talked about. I'm going to stop sharing now and go through any questions that may have popped up throughout. So I can see that there's a couple. So the first being, will there be a natural transition to AI for employee benefit technology? And it's an interesting question. There's a number of interpretations of it. I think what is really important to recognize and be honest with everyone about is not every technology company is going to become an AI company, but they will embrace, all companies are going to embrace AI technologies. So most technology companies will continue to be data companies, and their platforms will provide excellent experiences and allow us to both load and source large amounts of data. But not every platform, not every technology provider is going to be developing their own large language model, for example. They're going to be relying on, other large language models that are being developed by big tech in the main, and utilizing the power of those. So AI is definitely going to sit at the center of employee benefit platforms. It doesn't necessarily mean that every employee benefit platform in itself is an AI platform, if that makes sense. Secondly, how long do you think it will be until AI plays a major role in the benefits industry? I think it's going to be almost immediately felt, and it's going to be immediately felt in different ways and in different sectors. So consultancy, I think, is going to both benefit and be at most risk of change in the immediate term, because all of a sudden we can do analysis across far larger data sets and identify trends and opportunities that we maybe weren't looking for in the first instance when we set out, but they're being proactively flagged to us. So I think the impact of this is going to be felt almost immediately. I think the companies, consultancies included, that embrace the technology have a real opportunity to leapfrog competition that don't embrace the technology. And I think you will see that information being surfaced in really new, exciting ways within platforms like ours. But also, as I said earlier, I wouldn't just look at individual platforms. You've got to be thinking about that broader platform strategy as well, and thinking about how is your AI going to be used in your organization, particularly engaging with your technology teams early and understanding, is there any general purpose AI tooling that you're investigating for multiple users across our business that we're actually able to plug into if we've got the right data? We can use the data that's already available to us today. So there's nothing to stop us experimenting with this stuff. The one caveat of that is making sure that we adhere to data protection regulations. So you can't just immediately take all of the data in your HR platform, load it into public version of ChatGPT, and ask it to provide you some insights, because there will be data protection implications of that, which is why it's really important to engage your data protection officers really early on. But to answer the question, I think it's going to play a major role in within the next year for sure, and we're going to see some really exciting developments in this space. So those were the two questions that had been asked. I hope that this session has provided some insight. I hope it's provided some thoughts to take away, some practical steps that you'll be able to go back into your organizations and think about, oh, all of the stuff we've been talking about feels really exciting. Let's now make it really tangible in terms of how we take this to the next level. We don't need to wait until we've got the perfect solution to start getting ourselves prepared to embrace the technology that's now becoming available. Please do check out our website, zestbenefits.com, and hope this has been of value. And until next time, thank you very much.